Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for this hearing, and I want to start by thanking both Senator Brown, Senator Bennett, and Senator Wyden, our chair, for leading the effort to include in the American Rescue Plan the enhanced version, the much better version, I would argue, of the child tax credit. Would not have happened without their leadership, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today to highlight it and to make it real for people. Look, I can just speak from the perspective of Pennsylvania in the context of where we've been as a nation for the last 40 years. In my view, we've had 40 years of most of the time, with very rare exception, with a tax code being rigged over and over again for the wealthiest Americans and the most powerful corporations in the world. And it seems like every time the Congress had a chance to choose families raising children over very wealthy families or large multinational corporations, the Congress has chosen the latter. The only time in a substantial way that the Congress chose to help, through the tax code, families raising children was in the American Rescue Plan. And as Senator Bennett said, it worked. All the evidence shows that. And I'll go through some of that data in a moment. But I think the most compelling testimony for me, as someone who represents a large state, very diverse state, a state that has 67 counties, 48 are rural counties, where the child tax credit substantially, and in some cases disproportionately, benefited those families living in rural communities, with about, on average, $440 a month. When I listened to my constituents, here's what I heard. I met with two mothers in the Lehigh Valley on the eastern border of our state. Two moms, both testifying to me about what the child tax credit meant to them in 2021. In addition to the purchase of food, which we heard over and over again, and all the data shows that, that's what most families are using it for, food and rent and basic necessities. Ms. Lester, you said in your testimony, quote, "We used it to cover basic needs," unquote. That's what I heard in Pennsylvania. But here's another example. Those two mothers I met in the Lehigh Valley said they were able to use a part of the child tax credit they got to enroll their children in school activities they could never afford otherwise. Just imagine what that means in the life of a child. If they can't join a club that would benefit them somewhere down the road, to fulfill their dreams, whether it's athletics or some other school activity. Totally foreclosed if the families can't afford that. But Ms. Lester, you personify what a lot of our constituents have told us. You said, quote, that the child tax credit, quote, was a godsend for my family, unquote. And you again you said that it helped you cover basic needs. It gave us a bit of breathing room, you said. And you went on to say towards the end of your testimony, quote, "It makes moms like me feel like maybe, just maybe, it's possible for things to get better," unquote. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, why the hell wouldn't we do this again? If it works so well, on the macro level in terms of reducing child poverty, no action by the Congress in 75 years probably has reduced child poverty more than this one did. Why wouldn't we do it again? And why would, as Senator Bennett challenged us, why do we have to accept the fact that we have a high child poverty rate? To say the most powerful country in the world can do nothing about that. This is one thing we can do in a very direct, immediate, and substantial way to reduce child poverty. So I'll submit some questions for the record, especially about the other tax credit, Ms. Matsui. When you spoke and testified in your written testimony with regard to not just the child tax credit, which, so we can explain it to people because it gets confusing around here, helps families raise their children, The other tax credit, of course, is the Child Independent Care Tax Credit, which is specifically designed to help families pay for child care itself and other support. But I'll submit questions for the record, Mr. Chairman, but we need to do this again to take action to dramatically reduce child poverty in America. We can do it, and we proved it in 2021. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.